I'm going to demonstrate how to recycle clay, reclaim clay, to slink it down, get it back into a workable state, and then also how to wedge your clay. When you put clay into a bucket to reclaim, it's best to put bone dry clay. Bone dry clay will always come back to a workable state. It will get really broken down very easily because it's so thirsty for the water. It soaks it up and it breaks down quickly. Plastic clay will take a really long time to break down, leather hard clay, in between. In this setting, in this studio, we have everyone just put their scraps in our big reclaim bin. So in the bucket here, I will show you a picture now. And we have all of our low fire white clay scraps. And as we put it in the bucket, I do have a toggle wire that's adhered just to the top of the bucket so that you can break apart the clay more easily into very small chunks. So that first, before you get dirty hands, you want to make sure that wherever you plan on wedging your clay is set up and ready for you so that you're not stuck having to set up with messy, dirty hands or with dry clay or anything's in the way. So you want to make sure that area is set. Some places have a wedging table, some places have a canvas wrap table, drywall board. In this studio, we use either just brown craft paper taped down to the table. This is a multifunctional studio. Or we'll use Tyvek, which is like house wrap. I really like using the Tyvek. Sometimes if it's really wet, sticky clay, we'll stick a little bit to it, but in the long run, it's really a good way to not be so wasteful. I haven't got my Tyvek for the year yet, so we're using the brown paper method. Down all the way around if you're using a paper or cloth method, just so that it doesn't move around when you're trying to wedge. And do that before you go digging into the slurry bucket. Tape it down well, don't be stingy. Not little pieces, just really big strips all the way around so that it does not move while you're wedging. So at this station that we have here in the studio, we have these plaster wedging blocks. They're bats, wrapped in actually wood, and we use these to bring the slurry that's in the bucket, or the slake, some people call it slake, into a wedgeable state. There are a lot of videos out there and a lot of techniques where you leave your clay for a really long time on the plaster, sometimes covered, until it's all good and workable. In this studio setting, I like to try and get the slurry onto the plaster and off of the plaster and wedged in one block, in one 80-minute block. So you're going to dig right in, no fear, and get the slurry, slippery slake. You could have some chunks that are not really broken down yet. You want to make sure you work those through your fingers or just avoid them. And be careful with the wet, the water. When you're getting your clay onto the plaster bed, you want to make sure that you're not dripping onto the floor, causing a hot mess. So bring the bucket, that's the reclaim bucket, it's on a dolly so it can move. Bring it to you, make things a little easier. So you're going to just place the slurry in about a 1 inch to 1.5 inch coating. And depending on how much clay you need, that does determine how much you'll put on. But I will say that it does get a little smaller because some of the moisture does evaporate. And also, it's harder to wedge smaller. You have to find that really good size that's easier to wedge, especially as a beginning ceramicist. So I usually say it's about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, covering the entire plaster section. Try to avoid going onto the wood. It's not really going to help you when it comes to cleanup. If you notice, as I'm putting the slurry onto the plaster, I am placing it and then I'm pressing little divots into it. This is so that I can kind of aerate it. It makes it come to a workable state more quickly because air is touching more area of the slurry while it's sitting on the plaster, and the plaster is helping underneath to absorb the moisture. And then I will let it sit. Typically, I say that it's about 10 to 15 minutes, and then you can come check on it. I am going to go clean my hands. Okay, so it's been on the plaster mat for about 15 minutes now. You want to use a rubber kidney. You can use either a hard rubber kidney or a soft rubber kidney. I would not suggest anything that's metal, like a putty knife or anything like that, because it could scrape up the plaster. A lot of people use the putty knife on things like the wallboard or wood, but with plaster, you don't want to use anything sharp, obviously, because it will cut it. So I'm going to use the hard rubber kidney, and I'm going to use it on the flat side. There's like a straight side and a curved side. I'm going to use it on the straight side, and not the side that has the bevel, but the side that's completely flat with a sharper edge. And I'm going to just try and scrape from the corner, and you'll notice if you press firmly and then just lift after you get in a little bit, it will pull up a big chunk. Sometimes if you leave it on long enough, or if it's not too wet of a clay from the start, you could get it going and it will actually peel up one big chunk or really large chunks, kind of like pancake or burger. Okay, so I flipped most of it. You'll notice already that the clay is looking smaller, looks like a smaller amount. So what you would want to do when you pull it off into big chunks, it kind of goes down into big chunks. So you want to press it down, aerate it a little bit more, spread it out, so that then you have more clay, more surface area of the clay touching the plaster and allowing the plaster to do the work for you, really. So I aerated it, and now it's time to clean my hands the second time. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes, and I am going to start scraping up the clay, see if it comes off easily. It's coming off in bigger chunks. It's more workable. A lot of the moisture is out. It's still very sticky. It will still be pretty sticky. Sometimes we even flip it another time, aerate it, come back. There is wiggle room in the block of time, since we have usually 80 minutes. And if you come in right away, get your clay onto the station, then you definitely could let at least the 15 minutes to 20 minutes even per side, so that it really, depending on the moisture level. So as I'm peeling it up, it becomes pretty workable. Like I said, I'm scraping up the edges, just trying to get all the drier clay from that. That'll help me when I go to put it together to start wedging on the plaster. So I keep using the kidney, again, nothing sharp. And I could even press and aerate, even wait a minute and flip. It starts to just absorb the moisture. Some of the clay will stick to the plaster at first because it is still, like I said, very sticky. But as you're working, the plaster is so thirsty, it will just keep absorbing the moisture as you're working. Then slowly your clay will actually start to clean the plaster. It'll pick up the little pieces that are kind of getting stuck as you're working. So this is a really good method, like I said, so that you can do this in one block. We only have the 8 stations in the studio and generally have about 24 students in the class. So in the beginning of the year, there's an activity so that then it goes 8, 8, 8 in 3 days, and everyone gets their time at the slaking area of the wedging station, and then also complete an activity. During the rest of the semester, then students can come over and wedge their clay, get slaked clay at like different times, because a lot of students finish up projects at different times. I will introduce the new project And while they are either finishing up the last project, they're glazing, they're completing project planners, completing other activities while they are doing the slaking, so that then those downtimes of 15 minutes, 20 minutes here and there are not wasted. You know, it's quality time in the studio. You want to use your time in the studio, so we always make sure that there's something that can be done. Typically, it's a project planner. Sketch ideas. So if you notice, it's really becoming a nice workable piece. I have a lot of clay still on here. I could keep working on it and let it keep picking it up, or I could use a kidney and scrape that up. Like I said, that's really good, like drier clay that will help, you know, work in that clay and also get rid of some of that extra moisture. It's not ready to go to your wedging station at your table or at another wedging table if that's what you have. It's not ready yet. How you can check if it's ready is if you stick it on a non-clay covered area and some of the clay just kind of like sticks to your skin a little too much, then it's not ready. If it sticks to your skin pretty easily, it's really going to stick to whatever area you're going to and make it more complicated, especially if you're in a situation like us with a multifunctional room and it's paper or Tyvek. You want to make sure that it really is ready to be able to use in that station. So I'm just going to keep kneading it. I will demonstrate actually the motions of the kneading process at the wedging station instead of here on the plaster. But as I'm doing this, the surface area, like I said, is touching the plaster, absorbing the moisture, and then it's working its way in. And over time, it will start to get dry. You want to go as soon as you think it's wedgeable at another area. You do not want to keep wedging and wedging on the plaster. I've had many students do that, and they dry out their clay, and then you have to break it up into little pieces and then kind of rework it so that there's more moisture. It's basically like slaking in a bag at your station. So you want to make sure that you are paying attention to the workability of the clay and check it every now and then. As soon as it can touch your skin without leaving any clay, then you're good to go. I would set your clay to the side. We usually have a little extra space here, so you can set it to the side. Use the rubber kidney to scrape up any little extra clay bits that you have. If you're really skilled at this part, the next part should be just a very quick little sponge down. So after you do this, before you go to your station, I would sponge it down. Typically when we're in a wedging scenario, I will have a bucket of water here at the wedging stations, and with just little sponges, you get not a sloppy wet, sponge filled with sopping water. No, you just get a damp sponge and then sponge down anything that you couldn't really get that last final little residue off. Check the whole area, check the sides of your station, make sure you're good to go. In this studio, before you wedge, you actually sign up for a station. I have a dry eraser kind of chart, and your name is on each station. And then when you're done wedging, you have to come to me and have me come and check your station, and I will erase your name so that then you are not responsible for that station anymore. So then you can go and wedge your clay. Okay, so you have your station all ready to go, and you have your clay that should not be too sticky to where it could wreck your area. I always like to tell my students that they need to stand and wedge, so it gives you more strength. That way you're not working so much with your arm strength, you're working with your whole body. Your whole body is leaning into the wedging instead of feeling like you're always having to put more arm pressure. So there are two methods. You have the spiral method, which is not my favorite, but I still demonstrate it. So it's more of like a twist. One hand, your non-dominant hand, should go on top from an angle, and then the dominant hand goes on the side, and as you press forward, you're actually giving like a little bit of a twist so that then your hands are rotating, and then you lift and turn it, and you keep doing that. And as you do that, it's meant to look kind of like a cornucopia. It has a spiral on it, and if you notice that I naturally just picked up and moved back forward, it's creeping towards me as I wedge. So I'm going to just then move back forward and then keep going. So this is the spiral. It looks like I said, like a conical cornucopia, and it has that spiral here. My favorite is the ram's head. The ram's head to me feels a little bit more natural because I'm more balanced. I have both hands on both sides, and then that way I can just lean forward without having to rotate my arms. The ram's head is more of like, I always tell everyone, it's just like muscles, like show your muscles. Muscles like pressing towards each other and not pushing people away. So your hands are towards each other, not forward. If you keep going forward when you're working, so this is the ram's head, you push forward. If you keep going forward, forward, forward without controlling and having your hands at the side, you're going to end up with this long log, and it's not going to be usable. It's not going to be a really good block of clay. You're going to bang the block and it's going to fold over clay and make air bubbles. So you want to make sure that you're always controlling it, taking it by the horns. So I say it's like the palms are on the sides of clay, and your fingertips and thumbs are not doing too much work. A lot of students tend to press too much and make indents. It's the palms. These are just for support. And you're going to push forward, just a little shove, and then as you lift, where your fingertips are now, that's where your thumbs are going to go, and then your fingertips are going to kind of grab the underneath of the, the clay where it was touching the table, and then you're going to give it another shove. It's not like a straight up and down. A lot of students do that. No, it's just a little lift. It's like a 45-degree angle, and then it's just a little shove. As you'll see, it looks like it has a ram's head. It has a spiral on both sides, and it has a face. So as I'm working, if I were to just kind of push away from me and not control those horns, just push, 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 and rock back and forth, like I said, you're going to end up with like this long log, not usable. Okay. Another common error that I see is a twisting motion with the hand. The twisting is more when you're doing, the spiral. You don't have to twist. It's just a shove. It's just a grab and a shove. If you twist, okay, eventually you're going to end up with, instead of the ram's horns being even, you're going to end up with like these balls, and they just keep coming off. Eventually they'll even fall off. I've had students keep going, and then it is a chunk coming off. You don't want that. You don't want this dip. That dip means that you're twisting your hands. It's just a shove. You want it to be flat across. Students tend to do this, like they think they have to put a lot of pressure, and they push, 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 and now you have like, the fly. Like, it's not what you want. You don't want these huge spaces, because then when you go to push again, you're actually creating air bubble space. Okay, and you're folding clay over clay. You want the clay to be worked, but you also want it to slowly work so that you're not making big movements and folding clay over clay. So grab it by the horns, standing up, shove, lift, grab, grab, shove. This will come more naturally as it goes, as you learn and practice, and you're going to just keep wedging. If you notice, if you're on a brown paper and it starts to kind of get really ripply, or you're worried about paper coming up into your clay, then I just say, move in groups. So you just go to a new station. As that comes back to a workable area, you could just keep wedging in that spot. And if I did not take my paper down, this would be moving all over the place. The idea is about 80 times. A lot of students try to count. Don't do that. Just work until you feel like it's a really good, solid, consistent block of clay. I will also say sometimes if you're looking at it, you can even see air bubbles kind of work their way, and then out here, out in these little ridges. So as you think you're about done, you're going to lift and press less. Lift and press less. Nice and easy does it. Lift and press less, so that then you don't have that mouth anymore to the ram's head. It's kind of worked its way in, and all this is just a little bit more smooth, and then you can bang the block. When you bang the block, don't just throw it down and forget about it. Follow through with it, so that then it doesn't have weird edges and then roll off the table. It's not a huge bang. You don't want to smash the clay to smithereens, to a pancake. You just want to bang it into a block. And a lot of kids have trouble making it an even block. So I just say if you count through. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, and then flip. 1, 2, coming towards me, 3, 4, flip. So if it's coming towards you as you're doing the block, then it goes the other way when you go to turn. And that will help you to make a more even block. So now I have a pretty good block of wedge clay ready to go. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something.